Bonjour, bonjour, or maybe bonsoir. I don't know where you are in the world, but I do know that you're listening to the Earful Tower podcast, and my name is Oliver G. Every week, I let you escape to Paris with me, I suppose, and that is no different this week. I got a great guest. In fact, to explain about this guest, I need to rewind to an email that I got from Elizabeth Olivier that ended. I think I read a bit of it out in a recent episode, but it ended by saying, as a South African, I'd be remiss to promote a fellow South African in Paris. It'd be great if you could have a chat to Kobus Braai. I'm sure he is the braai King of France. Because I don't know about you guys out there in listener land, but I know what a braai is. I think I can even pronounce it. It is kind of like a barbecue, but in a South African style. I used to live with some South Africans in London, but that's a whole different podcast. But anyway, I look up this guy, Kobus, and well, I followed him on Instagram. He followed me straight back and we got to chatting. And then we got to talking on the phone. And then next thing you know, we're chatting on Zoom, having a good old conversation about food. Well, you're about to hear it, really. Talking about barbecuing in Paris, talking about feeding 4,000 people at once, talking about diving in South Africa. All sorts of things go on in this conversation. But if you're a visual person, I highly recommend you check him out on Instagram. Kobus Braai. This is the man who has a whole different view of cooking in France than you're probably used to. I think you're going to enjoy the episode. I certainly enjoyed talking with Kobus. There will be a little bit from me at the end where I read out a little bit of Gmail and some reviews. But for now, join me, an Australian, and Kobus, a South African, talking about Paris, talking about cooking. Oh yes, and one quick thing. If you are wondering what we're talking about when we say Thoiry, or when he says Thoiry, it's a zoo safari park in the sort of outskirts of Paris, and that is where he's been cooking lately. So if you hear that word, Thoiry, that's the name of the zoo park, Thoiry. You've got it now. All the information and everything we talk about will be in a beautiful scroll from Eddie. Speaking of Eddie, my brother who's doing the editing, can we get a little bit of an intro jingle? Kobus, how are you?
Well, I'm finding yourself.
I'm really well. Thanks for joining me on Zoom. It would have been nicer to be in a studio, but I think Zoom works, no?
Yeah, it works quite well for me.
In the background, in the background of your Zoom, it looks like you got a pretty big place, to be honest.
Yeah, I set the camera up specifically for that, to look like I'm like really rich and successful.
It does look good.
No, right? It's not so big, but it's open space because I'm a large man.
Right.
And I need to be able to move around.
And before, when we've spoken before, you said that being, in your own words, you said being a large man, sort of, did you say takes away the enjoyment of Paris a little bit?
Well, living in Paris for sure, because, when I move around, it makes noise. And wherever we lived in Paris, you're always underneath someone and on top of someone and then right next to someone, and nothing is very insulated and thick. So I know when I move around that I make a noise downstairs because I hear the little people walking upstairs very well. Right. So that made it, and I'm not somebody who doesn't care about stuff like that. I care about the fact that I might be annoying somebody or disturbing them. So it bothers me. So I'm much happier living, next to the Bois de Vincennes. In any case, I need a horizon to be happy. If I don't have a horizon, if I look into another building, I get a little bit unhappy. The other part of being large in Paris, especially when I just got to Paris, the amount of chairs that shattered under me in restaurants and trying to squeeze myself into the little the bistro toilet, which is the size of a little child's closet.
Right.
It's not very easy. I'm more used to it now. And I'm more sort of in control of my environment, so that's better.
You don't, from the pictures I see of you and what I see of you now, you don't look like the kind of guy that's going to break a seat.
As I'm sitting here, that sounds quite terrible, but I'm almost 2 meters tall and I weigh 160 kilograms.
160 kilograms. What do you have any idea what that is in pounds? I got no idea.
Let's have a quick look.
We don't have to talk about this.
No, in fact, that's not so. But so I do carry a bit of extra weight, but because of the work that I do, most of this stuff is solid,
Right.
So
Right.
I am. In fact, I think I'm a little bit less now after this the lockdown story because I
Sure.
didn't eat so much and I was exercising a lot. So,
Sure.
but it'll come back with the work.
Don't they say never trust a skinny chef anyway?
Yeah. Well, there are some skinny chefs that are quite good.
Right.
Somebody like Alain Passat is hell of a good, and he's not fat.
Right. Right.
But then he's eating like veggies all
I
day
was
long.
gonna say all he does is the healthy food now. I wouldn't be surprised if he's. But anyway, I want to go back to something you said before. The need for a horizon. Now you're from South Africa. I believe that you're the first South African guest I've had on the show, which is exciting to me as well. But is that need for a horizon something that comes from growing up in South Africa, where obviously you're much more likely to have a sunset view than you are in Paris?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I love France, and I love the fact that every 50 kilometers you're like in a completely different place with different houses and different people and different food. South Africa, the next town, if it's close by, is 50 kilometers away. And that 50 kilometers, might just look exactly like the first 50 kilometers. In fact, the first time when I made a trip through France, I went to the Cannes Film Festival, and I was driving. A friend of mine gave me a car, Parisian, and I was driving up on Napoleon's route through the mountains. And beforehand, diligently, I looked at the different places that I might sleep over.
Yeah.
And in my head, towns are like 50 kilometers from each other. so I get to a spot, and the next town is like 2 kilometers away. You can't even drive there. You got to like walk there.
Yeah.
So that was totally different. But in any case, South Africa, the wonderful thing about South Africa is you can get in your car, drive for an hour and a half, be on a 20-kilometer long beach with the sun setting right in front of you and dolphins jumping in the waves.
Yeah.
And there's nobody else.
Yeah.
I mean, in France, you've got to lock yourself in a cupboard and throw yourself in the Seine to be alone. But South Africa, that's much simpler. It's different things.
People say that Cape Town and Perth, where I'm from in Western Australia, are quite similar. Although I've never been to Cape Town. Have you been to Perth?
I've never been to Perth, but I think there are a lot of South Africans hanging out there. It's probably like very South African now.
Well, it could well be.
Everybody's doing a braai.
Yeah, braai. Okay, you bring up the next topic perfectly. There will definitely be listeners to this show right now who will say, "What was that word that Kobus just said?" Braai. Braai. Am I saying it right?
Braai, yeah. Braai, and the French spell it B-R-A with the umlaut on instead of two A's and an I. B-R-A-A-I. So it's braai, and that basically means, well, for South Africans it means barbecue. In reality, it means grilling. You know the difference between grilling and barbecue. Grilling, you're directly over the coals, and barbecue, you're next to the fire, and you use the heat and the smoke to cook with. But the thing about South Africa and braai, it's like really 2-3 times a week everybody has a braai. It's just like that. There's no, it's not something that's to do with a certain culture or part of South Africa. It's just everybody. It's outdoor cooking because there's a lot of good weather, and people love it. It's a social gathering. It's it was funny when I got to France because you invite people for a braai or a barbecue, and they arrive to eat. In South Africa, you arrive to light the fire. You talk shit to each other and have a few beers and discuss stuff and cook the meat and and do the general talking about food and insulting technique and things. It's like it's an evening of fun, of people enjoying each other's company around a fire. However, something that my son's French mother pointed out to me, whenever we do a braai in South Africa, people tend to make a fire, let the fire burn out, and then use the coals. And she said to me, "But why are you always next to a dead fire? The pleasure of a fire, the flames and stuff like that." And because I was in the habit, I never thought about that. And all the things I do now always has a fire going somewhere because it's it's beautiful and it makes a good atmosphere. So there is the French input in braai.
How fascinating. So when you came to France, which was that was well over a decade ago now, right?
Yeah, I think we decided to stay here about 13 years ago
Right.
because
Okay.
we were living in Cape Town and Paris.
Right.
Not a very bad life, Cape Town and Paris, between the two
That sounds
gorgeous
like
cities.
that sounds like a pretty good idea. But you get
Yeah.
13 years ago, you start inviting people around for dinner, and I assume through the French woman that was involved that there were French guests coming over. How did you react when they had such different ideas about an evening as you did?
With extreme violence, because
Yeah.
they're not used to. No, I don't know. It was a bit strange to me, but what do you do if people come? They just arrive for the food. Now, it's changed slowly, but there's not much I could do about it in the beginning, especially with the in-laws. You don't say, hey, pull yourself together. I want you here 2 hours before we eat. so, so that sort of took a natural course. And then, of course, there's not that many opportunities to have a barbecue, and when you're living in Paris.
Do you mean just
So
because, like, geographically, you mean?
yeah, because you don't normally have a garden. So when we moved out of Paris, it started happening more regularly, and then we have a place in Normandy with fireplaces and all of that, that's absolutely wonderful. I go there in wintertime, and I invent dishes which cannot be given to any living human being because it's a disaster. But then some of the stuff that comes out is really good.
This is something I want to talk to you about, the different kind of food that you make and how you've sort of married cultures together and stuff. But indeed, I want to talk about the sort of exciting different places that you've cooked for so many people by the looks of it. But first, I want to ask that we talked a little bit beforehand about the whole restaurant industry and maybe how opening restaurants and succeeding with restaurants isn't always everything that it sounds cracked up to be. It sounds like a dream opening a successful restaurant. Is that not?
Yes, it is, but it's. I really like to start stuff. I used to be a movie producer, and before that, I was a underwater hunter, breath holding, which are all things that are really. It really puts you on the edge of with the diving on survival because it's great wide area. With movie making, there's always some kind of a disaster that's going to happen, and I have a personality where I enjoy those kind of things where if there's a huge problem coming up, the pleasure is in finding a solution because there's usually a solution. Restaurants are the same. The beginning of a restaurant, it's absolutely wonderful. You go in there, you have an empty space, you have to think of what to do there and how to do it and where to put stuff, and all of that is really nice. It's a very creative time. It's a very I don't like creativity in one thing. What I like about what I do, you've written a book. I like to write.
Mm-hmm.
I like to make movies. I also like to chop wood. I like to load my stuff on a trailer and pull it, somewhere. I like to my giant metal barbecues. I like the physicality of every time I open the barbecue, I like deadlift, 40 kilograms on each arm.
Right.
I enjoy the whole combination of all this stuff. The restaurant is like that in the beginning because, it's sweat, blood, and tears. And then it starts working, and then you have a few weeks of euphoria, and then boredom creeps in because now every day, man, there's lunch and there's dinner. And there's people, and you cannot change anything because they get upset if the thing that they came for is not there. The same people start coming, which one would think is, great, but you have the same people 3 times a week in a restaurant. It's not that exciting. So finally, it becomes something that's really repetitive and boring.
Wow. You're the first person that said this to me. Do you think this is something that other chefs share this, or do you think it's because you've got so many spinning dishes and balls in the air at once that you feel like this?
I think, most people probably don't feel like that, otherwise they wouldn't be doing it. But what I do now, I take these magnificent machines of mine and I go to all the most beautiful places in France and I light a fire, sometimes in the middle of Paris, looking at in front of, what's that, Ile Saint-Louis. It's so funny to be there, to see the sun rising over the Seine, to light a fire there and to cook, and then to have great people come and eat the stuff. So, and everywhere in France, I've been to the north, I've been right to Marseille on the sea, everywhere. And in this spectacularly beautiful country, to go around to these beautiful places with these products that are just to dream of. I get stuff, and I don't only use French. In instance, I use a lot of Spanish meat because the Spanish are really, really good when it comes to the meat. But there's so many good produce. There's such a lot of people who like to eat and are not afraid of trying something new. I found the French, well, maybe it's my clients, but I find the French to be really curious about stuff, to be interested in things that they don't know about, and all that, which I like very much in people. It's like if you have only one thing in your mind and that's where your backyard, it's not that fascinating. Mm. So I get to go around, cook in all these different places. Every time there's certainly I still find it very stressful. I do a lot of weddings, for instance. I don't want to screw up a wedding, So I do everything way in advance. I'm there like first thing in the morning. And I make sure that everything is right and that that there's not the possibility for a problem or something like that. And then there's the immediate pleasure of having given these people a meal and they really enjoy it. Which so far, that's what's been happening, because it was a really shitty experience. It's like 100 people in front of you saying it was disgusting. Although I must say, once I was doing something next to the Seine. I stopped doing stuff where I sell directly to the public because I find it annoying. But I was doing something like that next to the Seine. And there was a flash mob of vegans that came in. And suddenly they jumped up and started shouting and all that. And they didn't bother me so much. I don't know why. I was very friendly with them and, taking pictures and stuff. And then I said to them, but I tell you what, next week I'll do a vegan barbecue. I'll see you here. Not one of them came.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. And I thought, that's not serious. If you want to come and do a flash mob here, then come and, support the vegan braai. But no.
That's interesting. It's interesting talking to you because I always have these, I've got a million questions for you for everything you say. For example, like, where were you barbecuing off the Ile Saint-Louis? Like, where's the space to do that?
There's a place, what is it called? There's a road. There used to be this road next to the Seine that's closed now. So just in front of Ile Saint-Louis, there's this little bar. I can't remember the name for the life.
Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. There's a park there now, right? Like a little children's.
It's like a double-story kind of a bar.
Yeah.
So I was doing stuff in front there, and I had quite a bunch of well-known people that rushed out to come or put an order in. That quickly came to get some food and then ran away again.
What do you mean, well-known people? Was it the president?
No. That's more. That's where like a lot of the stars live.
Oh. I bet you've got some stories about some famous French faces that you've cooked for as well.
Do I?
Yeah, I bet you do.
Been sworn to secrecy. No, the funny thing about that is I don't really know who's famous and who's not famous in France. Yeah. So sometimes, I'm one of I speak, I can make myself understood in French very well, but I tutoie everybody. I don't woo anybody, so that's like given. There's no, if it's whoever it may be.
Yeah.
So sometimes people tell me afterwards, but this was so and so and that guy, and they're all having a good time. So that's funny. The
Everybody,
one guy that I
everybody.
did recognize that came to eat. What's his name? He's a very funny French comedian, little guy.
It could be,
I
I
don't know.
don't know,
His
but
name
it
is gone.
feels like around a South African braai that everybody is on two form with each other, perhaps. That's the way it should be.
Yeah. Look, I also found that I think to a large extent this woo thing, people on that level don't woo each other. They're all tutois. This tutois thing is, to speak to the guy that's below you,
Mm.
so that he doesn't tutois you.
Mm.
It's I mean to woo. It's like basically putting a class system in place. Because the top end people they're not doing that. To each other, they really have to be far removed to do that. And then, people on their own level, they don't do that either. It's like a petit bourgeois thing to do that.
Mm.
I am probably just talking nonsense here, but
No,
that's
no,
that's
no.
my reasoning of doing everybody.
I always think it's fascinating to hear fellow expats and foreigners and immigrants talking about these kind of things, because everyone comes from different cultures, brings different things to it, makes for interesting discussion. But I want to switch the subject to sort of exciting and unusual venues where you've had barbecues. But before, I want to ask you a quick question. What's the most people you've ever cooked for?
The most I've cooked for, well, there are two ways of looking at this. The most I've cooked for that I thought was the biggest sort of achievement is 6,000 people over 4 days in the south of France for the Interrhône, the dégustation de vin de Vallée de Rhône. They have all their international people coming to this market, and then every wine area. They don't want to have one big thing. Everybody wants to have their own thing. So there's in Avignon, Ampuy, Tannes-l'Hermitage, and somewhere else. So we have to cook for between depending on where the place is, between 1,000 and 3,000 people a day, and move every night to be in a new place the next day. That was great, and we've done that quite a few years, and it's just wonderful. You don't sleep, but it's a huge adventure. And then, of course, working with the wine people, they know what good food is, and they like having a good time. So, it's a big pleasure. In one go, I think 4,000 was the most I've cooked. And we do a lot of stuff for Disney.
Wow.
A lot of stuff. I do a few events, not this year. I do a few events every year for Disney, and it's normally thousands of people. And the funny thing with Disney is that I do normally every year I do the party for the people who work at Disney.
Mm.
So there's like thousands. Yeah. So there's a few of us, and they have like hygiene people going around all the time to see that you don't make people sick, because if their staff gets sick and they have to close down, well, they've been through it now, but that's it's a big thing. So that's fun, though. It's just the numbers.
How do you cook for 4,000 people? Is you just putting like 30 cows in the barbecue?
Well, it depends on I can't make a full meal for so many people, so I do, like, say, I think the last time I did fish. I get 10 kilogram salmons, and I do, I don't know, like 20 or 30 of them. Right. And then I do beef, say pulled beef, and I do a couple of 100 kilograms of that. So then and it's not huge portions because they're eating other stuff as well. Mm. But I think the most pleasurable, the big stuff, the south, that's fun. The most pleasurable things that I do are not that huge. It's when I,
sure,
do smaller things, and I can put a lot more effort into working with special ingredients or doing stuff that amazes people.
It looks like some of at least from your Instagram posts recently, that some of definitely smaller than 4,000 people, but some of the special events that you're doing include cooking at a safari park. Is that
yeah?
You're there.
That's happened now. it's one of those things, where couldn't really start my season with the virus going around. But then it freed me up to say yes to doing this safari. That's at Thoiry Zoo Safari, to do this cooking every Friday night. And that has just been wonderful. It's really nice. It's a wonderful place to go and work in. It's beautiful. The place is so well done. It's in good taste. The people that come there are really nice. And it works extremely well. People leave there more than happy.
What do they got for animals in the safari? It looked like it was a pretty big expanse of wild. Well, not wild, but it wasn't like a zoo at all, was it?
No, the whole idea behind this is that it's a big enough park for animals to roam around freely. So, of course, they don't have the lions and stuff roaming around freely, but they have antelopes like the eland, South African one, the springboks, the blauwe wildebeest, the gnu, zebra, are running around freely, kudus.
Cool.
And then the other animals are in enclosures but not fenced. So they can walk around, and there's a place that they can't cross, but they're not behind fences and stuff like that. So there's rhinos and it's a real pleasure to go there. To me, it's still strange to go there because part of it looks like I'm back home, and then you see the oak trees, and it just doesn't make there's something jarring there. But it's a fascinating place. It's well run. It's I have this absolute luxury there of saying, okay, but I want to try this thing now. Can you guys make it? And then bam, it's like the genie just jumped in and built something out of wood and metal, and there it is, better than I thought it was going to be. So I'm taking full advantage of that. That's really great. And I don't normally like to be so long in one place, but the pleasure that the people the guests derive from that really makes it worthwhile. The end of the day is really nice, and people had such a good moment.
Right. But usually, I mean, if people listening to this podcast from wherever in the world, maybe South Africa, if they want to track you down to come say hello and taste your food, is there a place that you usually are, or are you all over the place always?
No, I'm not. I do 99% private events. And I'm very lucky to be in a position to do that, because I'm booked until the end of 2021 already.
Wow.
However, the thing with Thoiry is working out, and we've got another surprise for the winter that we're going to do one thing a month, which is going to be great. We've got that coming up. And we'll probably do a repeat next year at Thoiry of what I'm doing now. Because it's, it's like, as much as I like to move around and do things in different places, it's also hell of a nice to have a place that's almost, like home base.
Sure.
And imagine a South African living next to Paris, home base is like in an animal park, between animals from the African savannah. That's so cool.
It sounds like it was meant to happen that way. And I think for people who want to sort of keep an eye on the stuff that you're doing, Kobus, Kobus Brai on Instagram with some beautiful pictures and a kind of insight into the work that you do. Is it a good one to follow for vegan people, Kobus? Or is that...
It's funny, when you're in France, they love to eat meat. Make no mistake. The French in general, they big meat, they eat everything and they enjoy everything. However, you have, say, for instance, I do a wedding. At this wedding, there are going to be some millennials that have very specific views on things they can eat and cannot eat. And there's probably going to be a few vegans. There might be some people who need to eat halal food. There's, France is a big mix of things. My meals in fact, I get more pleasure now from cooking vegetables and in the barbecue than the meat. I know how to do. I mean, I know how to do that extremely well, and the fish too. So the thing that interests me a lot now is to to do different veggies and things like that in the barbecue too. And I do something that's fucking spectacular, which is I smoke those big mozzarellas.
Mm-hmm.
I smoke them because if you go and buy a smoked mozzarella, it's 99% of the time it's done with chemicals. I slow smoke these mozzarellas, and man, when you put your teeth around that, you want to burst into tears. It's so nice. It's so good. And the fish, I know vegetarians don't eat fish, but then I always say to vegetarians, if you are going to eat meat only once this year, you should do it tonight, because it's, the fish that I do these huge fish that I cook for, like a salmon, for instance, 10 kilogram salmon. I cook slowly for 4 hours. And it comes out. Now, imagine cooking the salmon for 4 hours. You think about this dry thing coming out. It comes out. So, when I take the skin off, the juices come out of this thing. It like melts in your mouth. Serve it without salt or pepper. It's really nice to eat.
Amazing. I think what we need to finish on is probably a question you get a lot, but that's probably because it's a question people want to know. Are there any secrets to become a better cook or a barbecuer or a braai master that you can share with us?
Oh, yes. Firstly, let me say there are no secret recipes. All of that's bullshit. There's not some magic thing that you can put on your food that's going to make it taste good. Secondly, I'll give you the big secret ingredient. You got to do it often. It's like most other things. You like 10,000 hour thing. The more you do it, the better you're going to get at it. Because if you do a little barbecue, even though there's no magic solution to it, and it's really, I'd always say that the way that I barbecue is the jazz of cooking, because everything changes. The weather changes, the food I do change. I can use any of my many different barbecues. There are many things that change. The wind can change while I'm cooking, so I have to adjust all the time, which is one of the reasons I love this so much, because it's not like you slam something into an oven for 60 minutes and it's cooked. You have to really play with the food inside there, and the only way you can get that is to do it often. And for instance, my barbecues have these thermometers on, and a lot of people ask me if it's to measure the pressure on the barbecue. In any case, these thermometers are decorations because they're in the wrong place. You don't really see the temperature, but finally you know what the barbecue is doing. You can sense what's going on that thing, and that only comes with time. And I cook with good products, which you find everywhere in France. Spectacular products. It makes life so easy. I cook with savoir-faire, the knowledge on how to do it. I maybe put a little bit of salt and pepper. I don't marinate anything. I don't believe in a piece of meat is not a sponge that can soak up stuff. I mean, it's meat. So nothing is going to penetrate it except salt by osmosis. But the rest of the stuff is just going to make the outside mealy. But that's it. So that's it. You cook it often and a lot, and then the better you get at it, the more you can try different things. People always say I'm doing a traditional South African barbecue. I am so far from a traditional South African barbecue. I have everything that I do there is stuff that I developed myself. However, it comes from the South African barbecue. It comes from the idea of a whole bunch of people standing around a thing where you're going to have a feast and having a great time, and then eating that, and the basis of cooking with fire. All of that's like, it's not just the cooking. It's a lot more than cooking.
So, in short, there's no shortcuts, Oliver. Get your act together and keep practicing.
No, it's like anything else. You're not going to jump into a car and become a racing driver, or grab a guitar and in a week's time you're Jimi Hendrix. You want to be Jimi Hendrix, you've got to play that bloody guitar.
All right. On that note, I might wind things up here. Thanks so much for sharing your story with me and the listeners. I really appreciated it, and I hope to one day in the not too distant future catch you maybe out at that safari park or somewhere else in France.
When you're back, before I'm finished, I'll invite you to one of these braais.
I would love that. Thank you very much. And everyone,
nice chatting to you.
Yeah, and everyone in listener land, go follow the Instagram account that will be linked below. Thanks for being on the show, and I'll see you when I see you.
Yeah, or don't follow me if you're going to be irritating. Only if you like, somebody that I'm going to like, then
The
you can
people that
follow me.
listen to this show aren't irritating people by very definition. If they listen to this much of the episode, they're going to like you, I think.
Oh, well, it was a good comeback.
All right. Thanks again for your time.
Pleasure. Cheers.
So there you have it. That was the episode. As I said, check him out on Instagram. Thank you very much to Elizabeth Olivier for becoming one of the most recent Patreon supporters and suggesting that episode. I'm really glad you did. That was fun. Now, a little reminder, if there were parts of that episode where you think, I want to know more about that, well, Eddie, the newest member of the Eiffel Tower team, and my brother has put together a beautiful scroll where all the information and a few other behind-the-scene extras for Patreon supporters are there. I don't want to call it a PDF document, because it's not, but it is. But it's not. It's a scroll with a capital S. Now, as I always do, I'm just going to read out a couple of emails, Gmail I call it sometimes, people who've messaged into the show for one reason or another, and just to let you know what other people are saying. So here we go. Okay, how about this one? It comes in from Tim on Facebook. You're going to think I'm making this one up. He says, "Hi Oliver, just a quick note to let you know that I finished reading your book yesterday." He's talking about Paris on Air, my memoir in Paris. He says, "I found it very entertaining and got so immersed that I actually put aside A Movable Feast for it." That's A Movable Feast by Ernest Hemingway. This is true. I can't make this stuff up. Thank you very much for the ride, says Tim. What a lovely thing to say. What a huge honor to have such a lovely comment and to put A Movable Feast aside. I can't even get my head around. Thanks very much, Tim. What else have we got? Okay, so why don't we also take a look at the reviews of the podcast where in the olden days I used to always read these out. Now there have been 488. That means soon there'll be the 500th. We'll have to make a big deal about that. But let's have a look. Here's one. I haven't read these for a while. Here's the latest one by Jenna Listens via Apple Podcast. She says, "Informative and entertaining. 5 stars. I've never written a review for a podcast before, but I'm so hooked on this one that I had to share my thoughts. I'm a bona fide Francophile and would love to live or spend an extended period of time in France at some point. Oliver has the best guest," that's certainly true, "and a fantastic interviewing style. There's a nice amount of humor sprinkled in, and all of this makes for a pleasurable listening experience. Keep up the great work." Well, I will, Jenna Listens. I assume Jenna is your name and listens is what you do to the podcast. Thank you very much for the review. What else have we got here? One from Patricia Clicks. So we got Jenna Listens and Patricia Clicks. There's a bit of a theme going on here. "Wonderful podcast. 5 stars. Even if you're not in love with Paris or France, this podcast is entertaining and informative." Hang on, the last one said informative and entertaining. It feels like there's a thread going on here. If you're not enamored with Paris or France, why not? That doesn't even make sense. If you're not enamored with Paris or France, why not? I think she means if you're. I think she means if you're an hour, whatever. Patricia, I appreciate the review. 12 more reviews and we'll get to 500, and then we'll celebrate that accordingly. A little bit of news, I guess. I've been doing a lot of Zoom talks around the US for my book, Paris on Air. Over the weekend, I did 2 in Arizona, believe it or not. 2 separate sort of bodies there that wanted to talk about France. If you're somewhere in the world and you think you could gather a good crowd who might like a fun Zoom, it doesn't even strictly have to be about the book. I did one for the Alliance Française of America, just talking about 5 secrets of Paris. 300 people were watching. Maybe we could get the same in Australia, Canada. Get in touch if you've got some contacts. As for me, a little bit of a look forward to the future episodes of the Eiffel Tower. I'm working like a maniac behind the scenes on the arrondissement episodes. Someone came up with the brilliant idea of going from 20 to 1. I think that's what I'm going to do. So I'll start in the 20th, and the idea, although nothing's confirmed just yet, but I'll go and I'll maybe even stay a night, maybe 2 nights, explore everything worth doing in the 20th, 19th, 18th, 17th, all the way down to 1. And do beautifully sort of researched episodes, meeting people, buying croissants, staying in hotels, eating in restaurants, and making beautiful guides to go with it from the hand and the mind of Eddie G, my little brother. And that will be, as usual, how how the show is financed. People sign up as a member on Patreon. Go and check it out. There's loads of extra content. starting with the scroll for this episode. If you listened this far, I bet you'd like the scroll. I'll leave you with that. Thanks very much for listening. I've got some cool episodes coming up as usual, including one about how hard is it to move to France. More on that soon. Thanks for listening. Have a very lovely week wherever you are. Merci beaucoup. Au revoir.